myself Dr. Deepthi Keval Ramani. I'm an observer in pediatric neurology under Dr. Ranjit Kumar. I'm going to present an interesting case of a rare and treatable cause of extreme clumsiness and movement disorder in a child under the guidance of Dr. Ranjit Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of Neurology, Division of Pediatric Neurology, Ramachandra Institute of Higher Education Research. So our case is a 9-year-old boy who was brought by parents to Pediatric Neurology Division of our hospital with chief complaints of unsteady and clumsy gait noticed since early childhood. He was the firstborn and only child of a non-consanguineous union. His mother had an uneventful antenatal period. He was born full term by a normal vaginal delivery, cried immediately after birth. He had neonatal hyperbilirubinemia on day 3 of life, which resolved on phototherapy, and there was no other significant family history elicited. So our child presented with a history of delayed development, but I'm sorry, I do not have specific development details as the mother was not available for the history. The father told that the child started walking independently by nearly 18 months of age, but had an unsteady gait with frequent falls since the time he started walking. He has certain impairment in speech also, which is very slow, and he takes quite long to complete words. He has some difficulty in holding spoon, pens, buttoning, unbuttoning also. He has some difficulty in holding on to slippers while walking. He also has a difficulty in writing. He writes very slow and writes in an unclear and big handwriting. He can attend to his own toilet needs but requires help, especially in the mornings. He's a very fidgety, hyperactive, inattentive kind of child with certain sleep disturbances like frequent arousals during the night. He goes to a normal school but has an average scholastic performance. And apart from the fact that he needs extra time for exams due to his slow writing, reading, and oral skills. The father also has noticed certain jerk-like body movements daily morning after waking up. One peculiar history we could find was a history of periodic fluctuations in the complaints, which were worse on awakening in the morning and used to get somewhat better after breakfast. And also there was an improvement of symptoms during the intercurrent illnesses. But there was no history suggestive of any failure to thrive, recurrent episodes of vomiting, any frank seizures, loss of consciousness, regression of intercurrent, any history of abnormal urine odor, any past history of fever with rash, or no history suggestive, and there was also no history suggestive of hearing or vision concerns. On examination, we saw that the child was an alert child, but fidgety. He was microcephalic. He walked with an ataxic gait, had intermittent bilateral ptosis, but rest of the cranial nerve examination was normal. He has had a dysarthric speech. His tone was was positive in his. He had very brisk deep tendon reflexes, but his plantar reflexes were flexor. His Romberg sign finger nose test were negative. He had some involuntary movements in the form of dyskinesia, dystonia, tic-like events. There was no organomegaly, and his vision and hearing were normal. So here we can see the video of the child. He's walking with somewhat wide-based, clumsy, unsteady gait. This is another video of the child where we are asking him to do certain postures, and we see that he is unable to maintain the postures, has some distal dyskinesia, dystonias, also has some facial dyskinesia, some tic-like movements. We see when he gets up, he has some again tic-like movements. I'm sorry. Another video where we are trying to check his facial movements. The facial movements are normal, but he has certain facial grimacing and tics. Again a tick we saw. So after the history and examination, we came to a provisional diagnosis of a 9-year-old boy born of non-consanguineous marriage with a normal birth and family history, a delayed development, hyperreflexia, ataxia, a complex mixed hyperkinetic movement disorder, including dyskinesia, dystonia, and complex motor tics. The child had visited with these complaints to many centers, but no diagnosis were reached until now. These are the possibilities that we considered in this child. First is the structural causes like cerebellar or posterior fossa abnormalities, epileptic pseudoataxia, inborn errors of metabolism like urea cycle defects, organic acidemias, glucose transporter defects, inherited mitochondrial disorders like Golgi associated disorders, vitamin and cofactor responsive disorders like vitamin E dependent disorders, neurotransmitter disorders, other rare genetic disorders like ADCY5 related dyskinesia or spinocerebellar ataxias, certain primary dystonia syndromes like DOPA responsive dystonias. But one point against this is there is no worsening of the symptoms as the day progresses. Rather, the symptoms are worse in the morning. So we went ahead with the investigations and found that the MRI brain was normal, which ruled out the structural causes. We did the EEG, which was again normal, which ruled out epileptic pseudoataxia. We went further with the metabolic workup, which was ammonia, lactate, homocysteine, TMS, urine, GCMS were normal, and ruled out inborn errors of metabolism like urea cycle defects and organic acidemias. His nerve conduction studies and mitochondrial gene panel were also normal, which ruled out inherited mitochondrial disorders. So the evaluation which we had until now was a normal fundus, metabolic workup, EEG, nerve conduction studies, MRI brain, and a mitochondrial gene panel. And the remaining possibilities from our list were inborn errors of metabolism like glucose transporter defects, vitamin and cofactor responsive disorders, neurotransmitter disorders, and other rare genetic disorders like ADCY5 related dyskinesia and spinocerebellar ataxias. So we planned a lumbar puncture for a CSF study, but the CSF study could not be done due to COVID-19 hospitalization restrictions. So we went ahead with the next generation sequencing directly and found a pathogenic variant in SLC2A1 gene, which was heterozygous and has an autosomal dominant inheritance, and results in diseases like dystonia 9 and GLUT1 deficiency syndrome 2. We also did Sanger sequencing validation for the reported variant, and also parent studies were done. Both the parents were asymptomatic and did not have any variation detected in their samples. So this indicates that the likely pathogenic variation detected in the index patient is a de novo variant. So now a final diagnosis remains as inborn errors of metabolism, that is the GLUT1 deficiency syndrome, also known as de Vivos disease, presenting as isolated complex movement disorder. Reviewing the literature of GLUT1 transporter defects, there are several glucose transporters that have been identified in various tissues. GLUT1 is mainly found in brain, kidney, placenta, and RBC, and is responsible for the uptake of glucose. This is a pictorial representation of all the transporters present on the cell membrane. And here we can see the GLUT transporter, that is a glucose transporter 1, which helps in the transport of glucose from the bloodstream to the central nervous tissue. And it is encoded by SLC2A1 gene. A defect in this gene could result in a defective transport protein and therefore a defective glucose transport across the membrane, resulting in glucose deficiency in the CNS and thus in the CNS manifestations. GLUT1 deficiency syndrome is inherited as an autosomal dominant disorder because of the heterozygous pathogenic variants in SLC2A1 gene. The phenotypic spectrum of glucose transporter defect syndrome includes a classic phenotype of developmental encephalopathy, which has epilepsy, cognitive behavioral disturbances, and movement disorders. Or it can also present alone as epilepsy, like infantile and absent seizures, or movement disorders like spasticity, ataxia, dystonia, chorea, and also alone with cognitive or behavioral disturbances like in cognitive impairment, delayed adaptive behavior, and a variable attention span. Ataxia and ataxia plus gait ataxia and ataxia plus spastic gait is the most common movement disorder reported by a recent review done by Silver G et al. In 2020. And ataxia has reported to improve after feeding in some patients. The characteristic biomarker for diagnosis of this disorder is low CSF glucose, that is less than 60 milligram per deciliter, or low CSF to blood glucose ratio, that is less than 0.4, in the presence of a normal blood glucose. MRI brain is usually normal in these situations, and confirmation of the diagnosis requires next generation sequencing or direct Sanger sequencing of SLC2A1 gene when the CSF glucose is indicative. GLUT1 deficiency syndrome is one of the few metabolic disorders with treatment available. The treatment mainstay is ketogenic diet, which is a high-fat, low-carbohydrate, normocaloric diet, which provides ketone bodies as an alternative fuel for the brain via the monocarboxylic transporter 1 in the brain, which we can see here. So when the child is on ketogenic diet, ketone body levels should be monitored, and it is recommended that beta hydroxybutyrate levels should be kept at 4 to 5 millimoles. It is also reported in the literature that the response to treatment varies depending on the age of diagnosis and application of the ketogenic diet, which makes early diagnosis of this disorder and start of ketogenic diet all the more important. There are certain drugs that should be avoided in such cases. First, the drugs that inhibit the function of glucose transporter 1, like phenobarbital and caffeine. And the other, the drugs that can interfere with the ketogenic diet, like sodium valproate, topiramate, zonisamide, and acetazolamide. So the parents were counseled about the nature of the disease. He was advised certain lifestyle measures and given the list of drugs that should be avoided in the patient. The child has been started on ketogenic diet on teleconsultation only because the child could not visit the clinic. And currently he's on classical ketogenic diet with a regular monitoring of metabolic parameters. We would like to emphasize through this that GLUT1 deficiency can present with isolated complex movement disorders without epilepsy in children. And it is